So, Audrey, can you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, hi everyone. My name is Audrey Tseng, and I'm currently a product manager at F5, where I've been for the last 2.5 years. So, as Masaki already mentioned, F5 is a networking and security company. So, currently, I work on our flagship product, which is called Big IP, and it's a load balancer for large enterprise companies. So, because our load balancer deals with traffic, direction, and then also packet inspection, we're able to provide security on layers 3 and 4 of the OSI layer, which have to deal with things like routing, IP addresses, packet forwarding, and transportation protocols like TCP and UDP. So basically, we're able to just provide better security as packets are moving in between users and big companies. So before interning and working full time at F5, I did research at universities across the United States. And then I also did some software development internships in high school and college. And I currently hold 2 degrees in computer engineering and engineering physics. Yeah, no, it's definitely very confusing because I think
Hmm.
in even in American companies, you had mentioned the project manager, the program manager, and product manager.
Hmm.
And even though there's 3 different names, I found that a lot of companies in America, they describe the roles and the responsibilities different from each company. So it's
Hmm.
not necessarily as standard as like a software engineer at company A versus a software engineer at company B. If I'm a product manager at F5, my role might look a little different if I were working as a product manager at Meta, for example, where our previous panelists worked. But right now, as a product manager, I sit in between engineering and business. So I kind of act as a translator in between the two. So let's
Hmm.
say a customer comes in to our sales team and they say, "Oh, I want to see feature A inside your product. Are you able to put it in?" So the account team will usually come to someone like me, a product manager, and let them know that there's feedback that's been given. And it's my
Hmm.
job to kind of take in all the feedback that I get from different customers or different
Hmm.
bugs and decide on ultimately what order these new features should be passed on and built in the engineering side. So
Hmm.
product managers kind of have the vision and the roadmap for a product. We decide
Hmm.
which new features should be built, how these new features should be used. And then we
Hmm.
work with the architects and lead engineers to build the design of what the feature would look like before it gets passed on to the engineering team. So I would say yes, but in a
Hmm.
little different capacity as I am right
Hmm.
now. So right now I'm working on a customer facing product, the big IP that I mentioned before. So a
Hmm.
lot of that feedback, as I mentioned, does come from actual companies that are approaching our accounts team and wanting to log feedback. But when I was on an intern, I was working on an internal tooling team. So that
Hmm.
meant that my customers weren't, other companies, they were other products and people within our company. So I
Hmm.
think that experience was definitely very different because
Hmm.
working on that internal team as an intern, I kind of already knew what my requirements and features
Hmm.
that needed to be built out were, since they
Hmm.
were pretty defined and I was able to talk to these internal users very easily. But I think
Hmm.
kind of shifting into full-time role, you'll find
Hmm.
that like when you're working with different people, not only
Hmm.
across the different time zones, but also different countries, that adds in a lot of new challenges and like
Hmm.
communication you definitely have to learn. So I would say that was one
Hmm.
big difference from my internship versus
Hmm.
now is just learning how to communicate between different people. Yeah, I think when I was an intern, the tool I was working on was supposed to be we called it an LLM, which is a local license manager. And
Oh,
it was
わかる。
really funny. Yeah, because whenever I would tell people, oh, I'm working on the LLM this summer, they would always ask me, oh, like large language model. And I'd be like,
AI。
no, not AI. But my
う
role
ん
was to basically create a licensing tool that would unify the licensing experience for all of our different products at
うん
F5.
うん
So we have three kind of main product lines, and the way that a user wanted to license big IP, for
うんう
example,
ん
compared to something like Nginx, which is another product that we have,
うんう
it was
ん
a very different experience. So if you
うんう
wanted to
ん
purchase a license, and then also renew it or add new entitlements and new add-ons, it was very different experience between Nginx and Big IP, which are just
う
two of the
ん
products that we work on. So my
う
team was
ん
trying to bridge the gap and have a better experience so that licensing could be more standard and uniform, and customers that wanted to use multiple products in our company wouldn't have to have some different experiences and it wouldn't be disjoint. Yeah, I
うん
think what
うん
I found really fun, like in my internship, was kind of working with the architects on my team and
う
kind of
ん
thinking about what workflows the user would experience. So
う
I would
ん
first kind of start out with, I want the user to be able to perform these specific actions. And
う
then I would have
ん
to think about what are the APIs that need to back these actions? What
う
callbacks
ん
need to happen? What information am I passing forward as a customer is entering, for example, their licensing keys and trying to access that licensing server. So I think that was really fun to kind of work out loud with the engineers in the room and kind of like talk through solutions. They would let me know, oh, like this isn't feasible because this is our current design. And then we would kind of go into this back and forth iteration of, I think this would be a better experience. What do you
う
think
ん
about a user going about this way?
う
And I think
ん
I had a lot of fun doing that. And I had a lot of good mentors that summer. So
う
I found it
ん
very enjoyable to be in that product management experience. Yeah, I think so. Before starting college, I did have the opportunity to
う
intern at
ん
Microsoft as a
う
software
ん
engineer
Oh, I
twice.
see. うん
So one summer I was working on like an educational coding team where I kind of created mini lessons for kids to learn coding through drag and drop blocks. So kind of similar to Scratch if you've used that
Oh,
program or
interesting.
are familiar with that. And then my second summer I worked on tooling internally for the Visual Studio Code.
う
So I was
ん
creating a spell checker for specific files within Visual Studio Code. And even though I completed my internship, I feel like I learned a lot of things from both of them.
う
I felt
ん
like, especially in the second internship I had, the role of the developer was very limited because I was given a task of, hey, like this is your summer project. These are
う
the
ん
things that you need to deliver. But
う
then at
ん
the end, like I didn't really get to see what happened outside of that project. Like I delivered it. I debugged it. It was fun getting to solve the problems, but I
う
didn't get
ん
to kind of see what happens to the product afterwards. And I think
うん
that made me want to look into other options other than software development. And I
う
think in
ん
America, especially when you're starting out in the more junior positions as a
うん
software engineer, a lot of
うん
times you're working on smaller items, which I don't think is a bad thing. A lot of times, like you're debugging or you're working on specific components. And some people find that really fun. Like I have a
う
lot of
ん
friends who are software engineers and they truly enjoy, getting to solve the problems and tickets that come through. But
う
I
ん
think for me, there was always that itch of wanting to see what happens afterwards or think about how do we iterate and make this product better after we deliver it to the customer. So
う
that's when I kind of started
ん
looking into PM. I think generally speaking, the difference between like intern and full-time, in the product management role, I think as an intern, I didn't realize how much politics go into the role. So
Oh,
I
I
kind of
see.
talked about how I sit in between the business side and the
うん
engineering side. So
う
I
ん
think when you're sitting in between two very opinionated sides who
Mm,
have their own agendas, who obviously we are all working for the betterment of the customer, but we all
mhm,
have different methods and ways that we think we can go about it. So I think I wasn't like sure when I was an intern that like I
mm.
didn't know politics existed and I would be exposed to
Good
it
for you.
so easily. Yeah. So I think as full time, I didn't realize, like the development process, not only does it take time to plan a feature and write
Mhm,
requirements, work with the
mhm,
architect and the design teams before you
mhm,
pass it on to engineering, but there's
mhm,
also many trade-offs that you have to think about when you're
mhm,
working on a feature in a company.
mhm, mhm,
Because, for example, let's say customer A approaches our company and says, I'm willing to throw you X million dollars if you build this
mhm,
feature right now. So then it
mhm,
becomes a game of do we want to chase after this $1 million that this new
mhm,
customer is trying to propose to us? Is it worth
mhm,
us pushing back our current priorities? So
mhm,
I didn't realize that as like intern, I just thought, things move really fast. And when you're an intern, you have 3 months to work on a project. So it feels like
mhm,
a lot of things get done in the time
mhm,
frame that you're at the company. But once you're full time, it becomes a little bit different. Um,
mhm,
so I would say generally that's kind of what I've had to learn. And
mhm,
then I think when I was working as an intern, because my project was in earlier stages, there wasn't really a prototype that I was able
mhm,
to put my hands on. But as full
mhm,
time, I think it was very fun to get opportunities to debug and test the APIs that I was building, be able
mhm,
to work on like the front end that I was implementing. And I think it's very fun to be able to try out a physical product and see a feature that
mhm,
you've built, know that it goes out to customers, and then in
mhm,
turn do live demos or even record things to be able to talk with customers. And I think
mhm,
in my current years of working here, I've been able to not only talk to customers in the United States, but I'm
mhm,
very thankful that F5 is a global company. So I've been able
mhm,
to do customer presentations in Taiwan. We've had
mhm,
customers from Japan fly in to our Seattle headquarters, and I've done presentations with them. So I think it's very cool to
mhm.
see how like our business impacts the world. So I think for our developers, I guess in general, before I start talking about AI tooling, I would say F5 has definitely been, I feel like one of the more conservative companies
Mhm,
in terms of AI adoption. So I think
mhm,
the previous session, we talked with a meta engineer, and they seemed
mhm,
very enthusiastic to welcome
mhm,
AI into the workspace. But I would say
mhm.
for us, it's been a little bit slower. So for my friends who
Interesting.
are software engineers, they
Mhm,
do have, Copilot within
mhm,
their Visual Studio Code, as that's the main
mhm,
place that we do development in. And then whenever they have MRs that they want to review, they're
mhm,
encouraged to use GitLab Duo, which is, I think, like AI review. So there
mhm,
is kind of the push for more AI generated code and AI code
mhm,
review within the company.
mhm,
But I think some of the people that I've talked to and the coworkers that I work closely with, I think there's still a lot of, I guess, maybe pride in the code that they write. And maybe it's
mhm,
because they've been working so long in, the software engineering space that has not been
mhm,
helped by AI. So maybe there's just
mhm,
more trust in the things that they're actually writing. They know what goes into their code. So there
mhm,
is a little bit of hesitation right now to be
mhm,
using those tools and relying on them fully. But
mhm,
I would say that for the timelines in terms of testing, for example, AI has definitely helped our testing teams build out better test cases and more
oh,
comprehensive. So we're
yeah.
able to get through testing a little bit faster. One of
Mm,
the projects I was working on, for example, in
mm,
November, they needed about a 2.5 week timeline to finish
mhm,
testing a new build. But when I
mm,
checked in with them at the beginning of February, they
mm,
estimated a 1.5 week
mm,
testing timeline. So I do think that was definitely helpful because that meant we were able to deliver a certain build faster to our customers and announce
mm,
something was available to them. So I think it's
mm.
definitely benefited the development testing internally, at least. Yeah, and I would
Mm,
say for product management, I would
mm,
like our AI adoption in terms of tools is a little bit slower as well. So right now
mm,
we do have an internal GPT, and I definitely do use that if I have like a quick documentation question,
mm,
or I need to pull information about one of our product lines.
mm,
Um, so that's been helpful. And then
mm,
also I've used Copilot, for example, to summarize long email threads. And I
mm,
think that's definitely been helpful when, you're
mm,
out sick or you're out on PTO for a
mm,
while and you come back and your inbox has like hundreds of emails. So the fastest way to be able to summarize that information, and I found really
mm,
helpful, is you can just
mm.
ask Copilot, oh, like summarize these emails, and it cuts down your reading time. So there's a lot of time that's I realize has been saved, and definitely AI has helped me with that.
Mm,
But I definitely do see there's areas where we definitely can be using AI to help
mm,
speed up a lot of the processes that we're working on.
mhm,
Because I think product management work is a lot
mm,
about data. So I kind of mentioned
mm,
how I take in the feedback from any of our business side, and then I
mm,
translate that into
mm,
decisions or features that I want to build. So if you
mm,
think about it, a PM has to comb through all these data. They have to look at
mhm,
the fields. So what are the account teams and the business side saying? What is the
mhm,
current competitive landscape? So what are our
mhm,
competitor companies doing? What features have they put out? What kind of support tickets and bugs are coming in? So if you think
mhm,
about it, there's so many voices that are talking in those sources. And I think the part that is time consuming right now in my work of doing that research to be able to build my vision and roadmap for the product, I think
mhm,
definitely that can be sped up, and AI can definitely
mhm,
help because AI is good at looking at
mhm,
data. If you have concrete sources, it can look at it, it can comb it and summarize it.
mhm,
So I think like that's somewhere where I'm hoping that as F5 starts to adopt more AI usage, that product
mhm,
management can get kind of permission to be using AI to look at these tools. But I think in
mhm,
corporate, there's always a struggle of, especially on the company level, of how much access do you give AI to your internal documentation. It's not as
mhm,
easy as, writing your own project or using AI for personal reasons, because there's
mhm.
a lot of information that is locked down and under kind of NDA or under contracts. So I
Right.
felt that's kind of the tension that I currently experience
Mm,
right now.
yep.
So, so I think it's talking about facing like different conversations between like customers and coworkers, and if AI tools have definitely helped. I would say they have. So sometimes whenever I need to write like a very serious email to like a director or like a VP of my company, I think I always go to our internal GPT and check my grammar and just make sure that it does sound professional, as I do want to kind of report um, the information in a professional way. So I would say AI has definitely made me less nervous to send out emails to like vice presidents or even like different customers within the company. Um, but yeah, I think the second part of the question of maybe the worry of AI tools risking confidential information, I do personally, whenever I'm pasting in emails, and maybe this is just my personal fear, is I do try
Mhm,
to redact information. So like I'll use like XXX whenever I copy paste text into the chatbot, and maybe that's me being a little bit on the cautious side. But
mhm,
I think I do try to be conscious, especially when using those tooling. But it would be nice if there was also an internal tool that could, redact information before it does
mhm,
get sent out to a chatbot. So I think that would
mhm,
also be a very cool project
mhm,
for companies to think about, is before we're sending our data out to an AI tool, can we auto redact so our workers spend less time worrying about the data that could get leaked? Uh, It's not necessary. So I do have some coworkers who they studied industrial engineering, and they are now working as product management. And then I do also have some coworkers who studied more on the business side, and they're able to do product management. So I think the most important thing about being a product manager is being able to communicate across your different audiences. So even though you might not have the full technical background to go into the deep conversations with architects, if you're able to verbalize what you want your customer and your user to accomplish in a feature that you're working on and show that through your writing of requirements and then also working with the design and architect, I think that's a very good place to be in. And if you're coming from like the business or marketing side, you have that people experience of knowing what customers are looking after, what the value is, and you should have strong communication skills. So I think it's definitely okay to be exploring product management without the computer science background.
Mm. Well, that's all about people skill, right?
Yeah. And I
Hmm.
think even though like I mentioned a lot of product management processes that I was talking about, like the data collection and building the vision and roadmap, I can definitely see being transformed by AI. I think like the one thing that will be more important and will continue to stand important for product managers and any roles is just the communication and I guess what we call soft skills that help us stand out as a person.
Mm.
So, for example, how well can you get people to agree with an idea that you're pitching? How do you treat situations where there's roadblockers, whether that be disagreements between different people or timeline shift? How do you resolve conflict in the room, or how do you respond when a situation goes south? Because I think product management, when you're sitting in between two different audiences, you're kind of the glue of the team. And
Mm.
there's a lot of empathy that has to happen, you know, when there's frustration with the developers or when the business side is saying, oh, like we didn't get a feature delivered, what are we going to tell our customers? So I
Mm.
think there's still going to be that aspect of the PM job that might be attractive to some people, is the empathy and the people connection. Because I think our ability to relate with each other is something that we still have an edge on AI for now. Like I think, you know, like having a best friend or coworkers or partners, I think it's comforting to kind of have relationships and create
Mm.
relationships with humans. And, you know, even though there are things like chatbots now to, you know, for customer service, I think there's still a value of being able to talk to a human face to face. It seems more comforting and more natural that you have an actual human being listening to any problems that you're trying to report about a product. So I would say
Mhm.
that's kind of even with AI, I think there's still things in the management job that would be fun. Yeah, so I think not only so I did talk about the data collection and kind of combing
Mm.
through those feedback loops
Mhm.
to be able to define your roadmap and what you want your
Mhm.
products to be on.
Mhm.
So I guess for example, like um, I work on a very big product that has a lot of bugs and support cases that come through, and just thinking about all those data points, like how can I look at those data points very quickly and be able to say, oh, like these are the top 10 priorities that I should be working on? So I
Mhm.
think it would be very nice, you know, to one day, you know, have like an AI bot that, you know, I can type in what are the top 10 issues in supportability because that's what I work on. So
Mm.
very quickly, supportability in my product is making sure that customers have data that is accessible and then
Mm.
reliable and understandable. So anytime that there's a problem, what kind of logs is our product generating? Do we have any diagnostic files? If a core crashes, do we generate like a file afterwards?
Mm.
And like just making sure that customers are able to debug their environment. So
Mm.
kind of going back to those support cases that are coming in, again, it would be very helpful if I can say, like, what are the top 10 issues that customers are reporting? Maybe they're
Mhm.
missing this aspect of the log. Maybe they need more information in the log. Maybe there's too much information in the log. And that would
Mm.
be a lot faster for me to be able to make my roadmap. because I think with so many inputs from the bug reports and then like
Right.
customers coming in, it gets very hard to prioritize and think about laying them all out. But if they're
Mm,
already laid out with AI tooling, then what
mm,
I can do is maybe go in and then ask AI, like based on the current market or based on what our
mm,
competitors are doing, how would
mm,
you re-rank this list of features? Would you
mm,
change anything about it? And then maybe that
mm,
would speed up my process of being
mm.
able to hand off features to the engineers.
All right. Thanks for your time, Audrey. It was great
Uh,
talk.
Thank you so much for having me.